Hey Tommy, that was quite the exciting trip we took down to Tucson to review what?
The new Hyundai Tucson and the new Hyundai Santa Cruz.
Yep, and in this podcast we are going to tell you everything about both cars. And guess what, Tommy? We have a special guest.
We do.
Yeah, I got to interview Brad, who is one of the designers of the new Santa Cruz. And so we'll do a little bit of my interview with him when we get to that. But let's get right to it. I think we need to talk about the Tucson in Tucson first, and then, of course, the Santa Cruz. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Santa Cruz, what is it, Tommy?
Well, it is the new Hyundai Trucklet.
I'm calling it a compact truck. They're calling it a sport adventure vehicle. But we're going to go with compact. I'm going to go with compact truck. You like trucklet. But before we get and talk about that, which is super exciting because we got to kind of crawl around in it. We didn't get to drive it, but we did get to sit in it and play with it and, talk about the innovative features. Let's talk about the 4th gen Tucson.
Well, it's a big car for them. So apparently this is their best-selling car in the lineup. It is a compact SUV built to compete with stuff like the Toyota RAV4, the Honda CR-V, the Ford Escape, the Nissan Rogue. You kind of get the idea. And for the 2022 model year, the Tucson is all new with some bold styling.
Yeah, they really popped up the styling weasel and really made it much more interesting. The thing about Hyundai, of course, is that, every generation, they kind of try to exceed the previous generation. I'm not saying other manufacturers don't do that, but Hyundai and Kia specifically do that. And there's a lot to love about the car, and some things not so much. So you want to talk about the good, the bad? You want to talk about the specs first? You're the spec person. Why don't you start with that?
Well, it starts at about $24,950, and it goes all the way up through
about
the
39.
The high 30s. It comes in both gas and hybrid configuration. It will come in both front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive form, although I believe currently only the all-wheel drive options are the ones you can buy. But it's a really cool little thing. So the base engine is a 2.5-liter four-cylinder gasoline engine. But funny enough, if you get the hybrid model, it's about $1,200 more. You get 12 more mpg, and that has a 1.6-liter turbo engine with an electric system, and that one makes 226 horsepower versus 187 in the normal gas version.
And coming later this summer, by the way, the regular Tucson is hitting the dealerships now, but later this summer we're going to have a plug-in hybrid. We didn't get a chance to experience that, but we did drive the normally aspirated and the hybrid.
There's also an N-Line coming, which is a sporty looking version. Let's start out with the style because it is certainly more angular, more aggressive than any of the other offerings in the segment.
Now, if you look behind me, you'll see kind of the Santa Cruz over my shoulder, and you'll see those little running lights. Those are the same running lights you're going to see in the Tucson. So it's a family kind of look now.
And if you are listening in podcast form, what we're talking about is the Tucson has a blacked out grille.
Yep.
It's like a shiny black finish, but along the edges of the grille, there's a reflective panel that hides LED running lights. So basically you've got kind of like an egg carton grille with these little squares, and the squares along the edge, when the car's off, they just look like more grille, but when you turn it on, those come to life and shine a bright LED. I think it's a total of 8 little blocks.
It's the same thing in the Santa Cruz. Now, probably the most controversial thing about the design language is, of course, they've done this thing that Jeep did with the Cherokee and then walked away from it, that the Kona does, where the big round lights are actually the running lights, and the kind of squinty long lights are the regular headlights. It takes a while to get used to, but if you like that sort of design language, that's where the Tucson's at.
What I think is so interesting about the design of the Tucson, and Chris Chapman, who is one of the design leads at Hyundai, was kind of discussing its language.
We did a podcast with him. If you want to listen to Chris, he did the 1st and 2nd generation BMW X5. So he's got some pedigree in terms of doing pretty badass cars.
And X6, and he did like the Kona. That was his team as well.
Yep.
So what they were saying about the Tucson is, unlike other cars that are supposed to look alive with, the two eyes being the headlights and the grille being the mouth that is supposed to breathe, they wanted this to look very industrial. They wanted it to look like a machine rather than a living being. So the eyes are down low, and they're not eyes, they're headlights. Rather than having the grille be a place for it to breathe, it's a place for it to consume air, like an industrial piece of equipment. Along the edges, there's no organic shapes. It's all harsh angles, very angular, very
jagged. A
jagged.
lot of lines, intersecting lines, a lot of triangles, a lot of 90-degree intersections. It's very...
It's like the opposite of organic. It's supposed to be very intentionally angular and muscular. It's an interesting idea.
And I think it works for the most part. I think it works. Look, that segment, right, is the most popular segment in America. So think of the RAV4, think of the CR-V. These are just very popular cars right now that segment's just on fire, and it's also one of the, if not the most, certainly one of the most important vehicles in Hyundai's lineup because it sells the most. And it's actually pretty ballsy of them to go and basically completely redesign the car. And while there is a little bit of resemblance from the third generation, it's pretty much an all-new car. And usually manufacturers don't do that, right? They won't risk alienating current buyers in favor of new ones, and Hyundai did that. So congratulations. Now, it's a much bigger car. They're saying best in class rear legroom, and I sat in the back, and I was very comfortable. And I'm 6'2", and not the smallest guy in the world. It's
an interesting thing that you brought up, and maybe we should pause on that for a second.
Sure.
When you look at the evolution of like the RAV4, there's kind of a direct line you can draw between each generation. The first generation shared some in common with the second, which shared a little bit with the third, and then you can kind of see the slow progression. What Hyundai's been doing pretty much across the board is every redesigned generation is like a blank slate. And it's an interesting idea, potentially a little bit risky, because there is almost no correlation between the fourth gen and the third gen. Between the third and the second gen, same thing, almost no correlation. It's like they have to reinvent the design wheel on every single new generation. Now, does that work? Well, I think it's kind of an interesting thing to keep the brand fresh and new, but it also means that if you're unfamiliar with the new model, you may not know it's a Hyundai. You may not understand that this is the lineage it's part of.
Yeah, so let's talk about the program, and let's do a little bit behind the scenes. So we arrived in Tucson, Arizona, and that first night we were there, they actually unveiled the Santa Cruz. We weren't allowed to take any pictures, and then the next day we drove from the hotel, what would you say, about an hour and a half? To a place where they do zip lines.
Exactly, yeah. It was out in the Arizona desert, in kind of the sandy area.
And we drove the one with the 2.5 liter, not the hybrid.
Yeah, we drove the normally naturally aspirated gas engine out first, and it was, we can't talk about how it drives.
Yeah, we can't, because we're going to publish this at the embargo time, so we can talk about driving impressions.
Okay, well, it's good. It's a very nice thing to drive. It's not exciting. I wouldn't call it particularly engaging.
I would say it's a little numb.
But
the steering's a little numb. It's almost too quiet in some ways. You're really divorced from kind of the driving experience. So if you like, I think Hyundai is really trying to make it very quiet and very refined. But to me, it came across just a little bit numb. I wasn't like blown away with the driving experience. It also wasn't exactly quick. It was right down the middle in terms of kind of how it drives. If you're an enthusiast, I think, it's certainly not the one that I would buy. If you're looking for, best-in-class legroom, tons of, room behind the back seat, a lot of options. My God, this thing had a lot of options, right? Then it's certainly something I would consider. But driving experience, I wasn't blown away by it. It wasn't bad. It was fine. But, it wasn't engaging.
It doesn't need to be, though. It's a small crossover. It's for folks that want to have the reliable, tech-laden, comfortable transport to get them from A to B.
I'm saying that, if I was going to go get myself one, I would just pop the $1,200 more for the hybrid because it's so much quicker. Right?
Yes.
It's got a lot more horsepower. It's got a lot more speed. The steering is still sort of numb, but at least it's got some, as Nathan would say, cojones.
It's a very, very good hybrid system. The fuel economy is just insane. I think highway is 39, or is that combined? I should look that up.
Why don't you look that up, and I'll keep talking about what we did. So we drove the 2.5 liter non-hybrid out there, and then they actually had the Santa Cruz for us on display. So we got to crawl around it, talk to the designer. We'll get to that in a second. And then on the way back, we got to drive the hybrid version. But Tommy, you actually went ziplining.
I did a little bit of ziplining.
You were on this massive swing where they tether you like a pig. to a rope, and then they drag you up about 4 or 5 stories, right? And then they give you this little thing you're supposed to pull on your chest, and the second you pull that, you go swinging down this massive swing, and the look on your face was priceless. I'm very proud of you that you did that. I was terrified just watching you.
And give that blue one a pull.
Yeah! Woo!
Brother math part later.
Bunch of bugs there.
It was a lot of fun. It was a pretty cool thing to do in a program. It was just like a lunch activity. They're like, you want to go swinging on a bungee? I'm like, sure. Why not?
It looked like it hurt.
So I'm looking at the fuel economy.
Yeah, it was a fuel economy.
So the hybrid averages 37, the hybrid blue averages 38, and the standard Tucson all-wheel drive averages 26. But for $1,200, you get something like 12 mpg better, 1,250. If you
I want to
get
say like, what, 80 more horsepower? I mean, the hybrid's got a lot more power.
I don't think it's that much. I think
Maybe
it's
50 more?
Yeah, it's 187. I think 226.
And you go from a 2.5 liter normally aspirated to a 1.6 turbo.
But this is the cool part about the hybrid is it's not a CVT in any kind of traditional sense. It's actually a 6-speed automatic and a set of planetary gears. But it drives like a 6-speed auto. It drives like any other normal automatic vehicle. So it doesn't have that kind of weird rubber band effect like so many of the other hybrids in the class.
Yeah, so the thing I love about the car, I love the styling. I think they nailed it. I love the interior. It's just very classy. It almost it looks like a Genesis more. Sorry, I shouldn't be saying that. More than a Hyundai. It also is very comfortable for the most part. There's tons of room, but they did the one thing that it's like you kind of want to ask them, did you guys see what happened with Honda when they got rid of the volume and tuning knob? Did you see how much love Honda got for that? And by love, I mean hate. And that's what they did. Unfortunately, look, it's such a little thing, right? When you think about it, the fact that it doesn't have a tuning knob for the radio or a volume knob, and yet because infotainment is becoming such a crucial part of any driving experience, right? Because that's what it's about nowadays. When you lose those two things, it's hard for me to get past. I guess, for me, that would be, sorry, Hyundai, a deal killer. I just need a volume knob. And there is a knob, it's a little like fob that you can toggle up and down on the steering wheel if you want to do a mechanical, but the entire screen is all touch screen. It kind of went back to it's like a better version of Cadillac's old Q system, right? Which is this haptic system where when you press things, it kind of comes back. But in a moving car, I think we have learned over the last 10 years that it just doesn't work really well when you have to kind of toggle things or slide things, especially when you're going up and down and left and right. It's just very frustrating.
The entire center control stack is all touch sensitive. So you've got the 10.25-inch infotainment screen, obviously touch screen. It's similar to other Hyundai products. But below that, you've got, like you mentioned, the volume and the tune knobs. Those are touch-sensitive buttons. Below that, you have the climate control.
Well, there's no button. It's like a little.
Well, it's like just it's this flat panel, and
Right,
then
exactly.
it's a little pad that you tap,
Yeah.
and then below that is the climate control, and those are also all touch-sensitive screens.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of. In the video, I said it didn't work very well, and then of course, when I showed it in the video, it worked perfectly. So it's one of those things where.
But when you're showing you're not driving,
when
right?
you're stopped, it's easy
Yeah.
to do, but when you're driving, it's a little bit harder to kind of pinpoint where you're trying to place your finger. I think it's going to probably be an issue, and I wouldn't be surprised if in the facelifted version they go back to more conventional circles and knobs and buttons. But we'll see what you guys think.
It took Honda, I think, exactly 2 years before they brought back the volume knob. That's how long they put up with the pain of people complaining about it. It's interesting because when they did the product presentation, they said they did all these focus groups and they really listened to their customers. And maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm the crazy one here, but I have yet to talk to anybody. And let's face it, we talked to a lot of fans, we talked to a lot of people out there who just come up to us, and yet I've never talked to somebody who said, the one thing I want is no volume and tuning knob, or the one thing I want is haptic controls on my touchscreen. It looks cool, it feels modern, it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie, but then when you're actually trying to use it, it becomes, I would say, very frustrating very quickly.
So this is a world vehicle, we should explain this too, which is pretty cool. They actually are going to be selling this vehicle all around the globe. I'm actually looking at a map right now on Wikipedia. And the interesting thing about the new 4th generation Tucson is there's 2 different configurations. There's the short wheelbase and the long wheelbase, depending on which country you live in. And it's amazing all the places they sell it. So for example, in the US, we only get the long wheelbase. In Canada, they get the long wheelbase. In Mexico, though, they get the short wheelbase. For some reason, in Poland, they get the short wheelbase.
Oh, we
but
like big cars.
in
Come on.
Belarus, they get the long wheelbase.
They like big cars.
And in Russia's long wheelbase, China's long wheelbase.
Anyway, I'd love to hear from you guys. Am I just beating a dead horse here? Do you like the haptic controls? Maybe it's just me. Maybe that's something that is something that you guys have gotten used to, or maybe I'm old and grumpy and it's fine. So I'd love to hear your comments. We'll read them. Love to see what you guys think about going back to those kinds of. Well, I'm going back. Going back when you look at Cadillac's Q system, but I guess from another point of view, you're moving ahead into a touchless, stylized, modern era of controls.
I think a lot of people probably won't care.
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right. Now we did bypass the off-road course just because. Look, when manufacturers do off-roading, it's usually like a dirt road, and we want to test it here to see if it's an off-roader. But my sense is that this is probably not like a RAV4 Adventure, right, or a Bronco Sport. This is more, all-wheel drive. If you have inclement weather, snow, maybe on a dirt road, maybe a little bit of sand, but it's certainly not going to be something that people are going to take overlanding.
It's an H-track all-wheel drive system, so it's Hyundai's
On-road biased.
Hyundai's version. It does have some stuff going for it, though. So both the gas version and the hybrid are normal transmissions. They're not dual clutches, which is good. I think it might be better than you expect. Now, the off-road that course they had, I was talking to someone who did it. It was like 26 miles, and it was just
dirt road.
It was too long to kind of do on this one-day program, and it was all dirt roads.
Well,
yeah.
we had a choice. We could have either done that, or done the Santa Cruz. You couldn't do both.
Yep, so we decided to go do the little pickup truck thing, the Santa Cruz, rather than spend 26 miles on dirt roads. But once we get it here in Colorado, we'll be sure to put it up Tombstone Hill and see how it does. I think it'll be okay, Dad.
Okay.
I think it'll be like a RAV4 or,
Yeah, I agree.
or a RAV4 Adventure. The Adventure RAV4 is cool, but it's not any more off-road worthy in a lot of ways than like or the TRD off-road is not
look,
more off-road worthy than Adventure.
We shouldn't hold everything through the crucible of off-roadiness, right?
Well, no one's going to use it as a...
Yeah, exactly. Most people use this thing as their everyday vehicle, going to work, going to the supermarket, doing their shopping, and just their everyday vehicle. And I think for that, having a capable all-wheel drive system is fantastic.
So there's a bunch of different engines globally too, most of which we don't get here in the U.S.
Any diesels? Are they still doing diesels?
No.
We're very lucky here in America, Tommy. We have one of the most competitive automotive markets, and while we don't get as much choice as, let's say, the Europeans do, we do get, cars that are spec'd out to the nines, which means everything at a very low price. So people here are used to getting, all the bells and whistles and not paying a lot for it. And you compare that to other places in the world, and it's pretty astounding, actually, how affordable, like really top drawer cars are here.
There are some weird transmissions abroad, like
Oh.
a 6-speed manual, a 6-speed clutchless manual, the 7-speed dual clutch, things that we aren't getting here in the States. Other things that are kind of cool about this, so the 2.5, the base engine, has both multi-port fuel injection and gasoline direct injection, depending on which RPM you're at. So it's dual injected. The 1.6 has various length valve duration, so it can change the amount of time that the valves stay open and closed to optimize for efficiency and power. It's got a lot of high-tech stuff. I think it's going to be pretty reliable. Hyundai's really been pushing their longevity, and it's got that magnificent, 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. And I think the value is pretty good. The one we were in was 37 or something for the gas, and then the hybrid was 39.
And we've got walk-around videos, kind of a hands-on video for both of these, so go to TFL Car and go to TFL Now to see those two. I think you did the hybrid, I did the regular one. The cool thing is, we weren't able to do driving impressions, so if you're listening to this or watching this, you're the first to get actual driving impressions of the vehicle.
It was great. I really liked it. It had that cool thing where when you walk up behind it, the lift gate automatically opens up.
Yeah.
So you don't have to use the key.
And my God, is it big. I remember I crawled into the back of that thing with the seats down. I could lay down at 6'2", like I said, almost the whole length of myself. And, you could almost sleep in the back of that thing. It's pretty cool.
It's very spacious, yes, for sure. I think it had a split second
So which
row.
one would you get? If it were your car, would you get the normally aspirated 2.5, the hybrid, or the plug-in hybrid? We don't know much about the plug-in hybrid.
Yeah, I can't speak to that, but of the two I drove, definitely the hybrid is the way to go. It's not much more expensive, it's much quicker, and you get far better fuel economy.
And did you like driving? Did you like how it drove?
Yeah, it was fine. It was pretty numb and it wasn't anything special, but the brake it wasn't going to fall over.
It's capable, right?
Yeah,
it
it's not gonna-
accelerates quickly.
it's got
it
brakes.
brakes well. It steers well. It's just not, you're not going to be, flogging it around your favorite hills and mountains, because that's not what the vehicle is designed to do. And there's also a sense of safety. So Hyundai said they are going with the vehicle for the highest safety ratings, which is the what is it? It's the Plus, right? It's the highest one. So it has to have good headlights. It has to, of course, have offset crash testing. And I think they'll do it. I have high hopes that this vehicle will be extremely safe. So if you're looking for something safe, once it's completely crash tested, we'll have that up on TFL Car and let you know what the rating is. But I think it'll get the Plus rating.
There's also the Hyundai Digital Key, which is neat. It's a phone as key technology, so you've got an app on your phone with all your credentials plugged in. Keep your phone in your pocket, and you can pull it out. I don't know if you have to pull. No, I think you can use it with Bluetooth on. As long as your Bluetooth is enabled on your phone, you can actually use the phone as the key to the vehicle, so you can get in it and start it up and drive it along, and never need the traditional
That's
key
one of my
fob.
favorite features that our Tesla Model Y has. When it works, I love it.
It works 99% of the time.
I got 90%. The app has to be running on my phone for some reason, otherwise I walk up to it and it doesn't do it.
But as long as the app is running, you
But it's
should
a cool
be good
feature.
to go. Yep.
I think people have their phones with them all the time, and it's one less thing you have to carry in your pocket or purse. And then I also thought that the interior design was very beautiful. I think that the seats were comfortable. Well, we had an issue with ours, but that might be a pre-production, so we won't go into it. The back seats were comfortable. I like the look of the vehicle. It just felt like a premium vehicle that you're getting at. Well, okay, I shouldn't say you're getting at a bargain basement price, right? Once upon a time, Hyundai, with their warranty and with their vehicles, certainly was the entry level, most value oriented brand. But now, at 39,000. You're going to be, at the same level that a CRV or high-end RAV4 is going to be. So you're not really saving much. The one thing you are getting is, all the safety gear, right?
Yep,
So,
you get all the safety gear.
well, like autonomous braking, blind side monitoring, lane keep, anything that you can think of, where most, rear passenger occupant alert, autonomous rear alert and braking, right? If you're going to, run over the kid behind you who you didn't see. All that comes standard on the vehicle, and I think that's wonderful, Tommy. I applaud the manufacturers for doing that, and I think it's gotten to the point now where the companies that don't offer that as standard, and I'm talking to you, domestic car manufacturers, you're going to have to start supplying that, because it's going to start hurting your market share. I think people really want that stuff, especially when it comes to life-saving technology.
So should we move on to the...
Hell yeah, let's go. Let's talk about the Santa Cruz. I've been chomping at the bit to talk about this. It was 5 years ago that this thing got unveiled in Detroit. Actually, 6 years ago, Tommy.
Yeah.
Seems like forever ago.
Now, the Santa Cruz, in essence, is a small unibody compact pickup truck.
That they're calling a sports adventure vehicle.
If you are listening to the podcast instead of watching it on YouTube, the front end is pretty similar to the Tucson. So it's got a very similar grille design.
But they're different.
Well, what they did, and I was talking to Brad about this, and we'll play that interview here in a second, but what they did is they used it as inspiration, but nothing is interchangeable. So there's no parts apart from the dashboard mounts, like the rear view mirror, that's similar between the Tucson and the Santa Cruz. So even though at a first glance you're like, oh, it's got the same front end, it does not have the same front end. It's more angular, it's a little bit more aggressive than the Tucson, but the overall language is pretty similar.
Yeah, so in case you're wondering what this is, I mean, the closest thing to it right now would be the old Subaru Baja, right? Maybe an El Camino, but an El Camino had, didn't have four-seater, right? It was a two-door with a full-size bed. I believe some El Caminos actually had super long beds. This has a 4-foot bed with the tailgate making it, 5 feet?
If you are looking for a size comparison, overall length is somewhere around 17 inches shorter than a Tacoma. It's about 14 inches shorter than a Ridgeline. And it's about 10 inches shorter than a Frontier. So it's a really small little trucklet. I'm calling it a trucklet because It's still a four-door. It's a crew cab, if you will, unibody, and it does have some more capabilities than like the Tucson in terms of open-air hauling, but it's not necessarily a true body-on-frame, what you'd consider a pickup truck.
So let's talk about the good, okay? So, this was designed in California by Brad. Should we play the interview right now? Let's play a little bit of that interview right now.
So from a design perspective, we wanted to create something that highlighted the contrast that its environment sort of portrays, right? So we imagine this vehicle, because of its footprint, it's going to be in dense urban environments. It's going to allow you to thrive in those environments because it is a smaller footprint, but it's also going to encourage an escape to the outdoors as well. And that contrast of environments drove sort of the overall aesthetic of the vehicle.
Yeah.
So from its proportions all the way down to its details, we were trying to convey that contrast and those origins.
So let me ask you this question, right? I posed this in our little video. Is it a sport adventure vehicle? Is it a compact pickup, or is it a ute?
It's honestly whatever you want to call it. And I think that's fair for the customer and the viewer to call it whatever they want. We've chosen sport adventure vehicle because we felt like that term was most suited to the vehicle, but it doesn't really matter. It's a Hyundai Santa Cruz. So yeah, like I said, the whole vehicle kind of embodies this contrast and this duality that we were speaking about. But starting at the front, it was important to us to create a front end that you couldn't recognize as a traditional pickup. So doing that, we've got the really bold bumper and front grille. We're also utilizing the hidden lamp technology that we have on both the Sonata, the current Tucson. So you've got this one-way chrome finish that the DRLs then shine through, giving the front end a really modern but also tough appearance. In terms of the overall architecture of the front, there's a lot of, again, contrast in the big, powerful volumes, and then you contrast that volume with really sharp precision edges.
So let's talk about the bed. So composite, right? So you got composite material.
Composite material. And yeah, just, the bed is essentially, it's not exactly, but essentially 4 foot by 4 foot. The height of the wheel wells was intentionally designed so that when the tailgate is in its half open position, you've got essentially a flat load floor from this edge to the upper part of the wheel wells, allowing you to carry 4x8 sheets. Inside the bed, we've got the inner bed compartment that's completely weatherproof. So you can, keep this. It also has a drain, so you can keep your, drinks, ice, anything like that, or, the wetsuit after surfing, so it's not kind of rolling around the tailgate of the truck or the bed of the truck. We've also got kind of side storage compartments available, power in the right side.
And tie downs.
And tie downs, yeah, a bunch of different, this cleat system that can go up and down and be adjusted to anywhere you need, and then we also have fixed D-rings.
Right, and tell me about this kind of 10-out cover that disappears into the back of the truck.
Yeah, so the tonneau cover is optional, comes standard with any vehicle with the activity package or above. So yeah, it's a standard feature. We felt it was important based on the research. A lot of people are potentially coming out of SUVs and CUVs when they are looking to purchase this vehicle, and security is very important to them. So that was important to offer a feature like that. The tonneau cover can be removed if you wanted a bit more space and to easier haul mountain bikes, several mountain bikes if you wanted to.
So you said you have a Ducati Desert Sled. Does it fit? That's a kind of a dual sport motorcycle.
I haven't tried the Ducati Desert Sled, but my Husqvarna 350 does without the tonneau cover.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So there you have it from one of the designers. So that kind of gives you, what they were thinking about. But think about this as kind of your beach surfing vehicle, right? It's a trucklet for the urban truck buyer, right? The problem with most trucks, even mid-sized trucks, is they've gotten so big. I mean, a Tacoma now is just a really big vehicle, and forget about full-size or heavy-duty trucks. But this is the kind of truck that you could actually fit in your garage because it's about the same length, maybe a little bit longer than a crossover would be. And so, if you're looking for hauling like big tall plants or mulch or maybe some stuff in the back, it's perfect. If you're actually looking to put he said he could put his dirt bike in there, but you couldn't put my dirt bike in there. It would just be too long.
If you put it at an angle, if you put it sideways.
It
You don't think so?
No, I have a KTM 690. It barely fit. I just brought it back from.
Yeah, but that
the
bike
mountains.
is huge. It's the size of an elephant. I don't know why it's so
With
massive.
the tailgate down, it barely fit into the TRX, which is a standard 5.5-foot bed. Plus, you had to use the tailgate. This thing's going to have a 5-foot bed with the tailgate down.
It would be a
It'd
monster
be like hanging
squeeze.
over with one wheel.
I think you could probably, if you put it in sideways, make it happen.
Anyway, it's and the coolest thing about it is, and I saw this for the first time in the Cybertruck. It's got this like roll-up tonneau cover, right? So you can actually enclose the space. And I never did get a full answer. They said it was mainly waterproof.
It's an integrated tonneau cover, and it's not. They told me it was actually a factory installed
Yes.
thing. And it's removable with 9 bolts if you want it to be, but you buy it from the factory, and like you said, it's like a little corrugated roll-up sheet, and then you pull it out. You can lock it up,
Yep.
and tailgate locks, and it's nice and secure.
Which solves that problem. Like, let's say you're going to pick up some friends at an airport and it's raining and you can't put their luggage in the back because the vehicle is full. Now you've got hopefully a secure place to put them. You also have, like in the Ridgeline, this little underneath storage unit, right? Maybe it'll hold, what would you say, how big is that? Like maybe, two 12 packs of beer, right? That's how big that under the bed space would be. It's not as big as the Ridgeline. The Ridgeline, you could get into almost.
It's a trunk, so
Yeah.
it's got a trunk underneath the bed. The bed panel folds up. It's got a composite bed, and then there's a cubby underneath. It's much, like you mentioned, shallower than the Honda, and that's because the Honda has a cubby for the spare tire there.
Yeah, whereas the Santa Cruz has a spare tire underneath, which
So
is...
they couldn't have made it as deep.
Yeah, but that's also good because let's say you do have a short dirt bike, like your monkey. Your monkey would fit in this thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If you threw the monkey in there and you got a flat tire and the tire was under the bed, when I say under the bed, I mean, on top,
How about we use this in the trunk?
in the trunk, yeah, or by the trunk, then you would have to take the monkey out to get, with this one, it's just like a regular truck tire. It's underneath, you just, wheel it down from there and change your tire, and away you go without removing whatever's in the bed.
Yep, and then that's also lockable as well. So the cubby underneath the bed is lockable. It's got a dampened tailgate, we were told. And should we go into the powertrains a little
and
bit?
the one we had didn't have it, but the rear window also goes down.
Nope, it slides.
Slides down, that's what I said. Also
Nope, it slides sideways.
slides sideways.
It's
but
going to be like a regular. So the Tundra, the whole window slides down, and this just part of the window is going to slide left and right. So one thing that's worth noting though is some of like the weird other trucklets in the past, like the Baja and
Right.
the Avalanche, they've had a removable bulkhead. So there's either been like a cubby that you
you can't remove it.
open, or there's a place you can slide really long items, and you can't do that in the Santa Cruz.
So this is, I'll let you do that. You're much better at this. But let's talk. There's 2 powertrains, and you can get it in 2-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, or all-wheel drive. So let's talk about that.
The entry-level powertrain is the naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder with horsepower ratings of about 190 and torque ratings of about 180 pound-feet of torque.
The same one in the Tucson.
The optional engine is a 2.5-liter turbocharged engine, so same displacement but with a turbo, and that pumps out 275 horsepower or thereabouts and 310 pound-feet of torque, which is a huge amount of horsepower for a little itty-bitty truck.
Yeah, and now here's where it gets a little interesting. If you're looking at, the thing about little trucks, of course, is that they're trucks, and trucks usually go off-road. So I think this one we're going to hold to a higher standard than we did the Tucson. So if you do want to go off-road, the one you want is the entry level for 2 main reasons. First of all, neither the entry level the smaller engine or the bigger engines have a low range, so you're not going to get that. So you're going to have to make do with kind of a Ridgeline all-wheel drive powertrain setup. But the smaller of the 2 engines comes with an 8-speed automatic with a torque converter, which is good off-road. But the bigger engine comes with what, Tommy?
A dual
Andre.
clutch.
I'm doing trucks. I'm calling you Andre.
Oh yes, I know. You've only known me for 24 years.
Exactly, I know.
The bigger engine with more power has a dual clutch transmission.
Yes.
So 8-speed conventional transmission in the entry-level engine, 8-speed dual clutch transmission in the big engine.
And like in the Sorento that we recently tested, the dual clutch did overheat. And for the most part, every time we've tested dual clutches, they don't do really well. So what I like to say is, in our testing and in my experience, if you want to go off-road, the best transmission is an automatic. You may dispute that, but it's just a lot easier, followed by a manual transmission, followed by a CVT, followed by a dual clutch. Now, dual clutches are phenomenal transmissions. Basically, they have the next gear ready and waiting while the first gear is engaged. And especially on a track, there is nothing better than a dual clutch. But in stop and go traffic and off-road, they can be kind of herky-jerky and they can overheat.
Well,
Now,
hold up there.
What?
Big news on this front, actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the previous dual clutches we've taken off-road in Hyundai and Kias that have overheated,
Yep.
not this dual clutch,
Also in the Ridgeline.
but no.
The Ridgeline all-wheel drive overheated, not the dual clutch, because it didn't have a low range.
Well, that one was different. That was actually
That was
a
a
torque.
six-speed,
That was
yeah.
a torque converter transmission that overheated. But you just threw me away. I don't know what that was. Let me get back on my train of thought because this is very important.
Yep.
The dual clutch in like the Seltos that overheated,
Yep.
and the Kona,
Yep.
and the Sorento, is a dry dual clutch.
This is a wet dual clutch.
This is a wet dual clutch. So this is a new transmission that they've developed for vehicles like the Veloster N. So it's supposed to be better, and they say that it survived their 29-mile off-road torture test without overheating. So we'll see what that means.
I'm hoping you're right. You know, I'm going to be rooting for it to not overheat. I'm going to be rooting for it to work off-road. The other reason you may want the smaller engine is because of tires and wheels. Let's talk about that.
There's an 18-inch tire option and an 18-inch wheel option and a 20-inch wheel option. So the 18-inch will, in theory, allow you to put a bigger tire on it, which
More
is
sidewall, which is better.
better for four-wheel drive. And towing numbers are worse on the small engine, or they're the same size engine, or worse on the entry-level 2.5. So it's 3,500 pounds on the base one, and then 5,000 pounds if you get the turbo.
Now I was talking to Hyundai, our friends at Hyundai, and they may actually give us one or lend us one for a year actually to do a long-term test on, and I'd be super excited for that. I think this is a very significant vehicle. Right now, as you probably know, if you're listening to this, trucks are red hot, and this solves a problem that most wannabe truck owners have, and that is, how do I own a trucklet or a ute or compact truck and still live in a city? And let's face it, most people live in cities. So this is kind of that, perfect solution. I think it'll actually sell really well. The Baja didn't exactly knock the socks off of people when it came out, and now they're super popular. And maybe that was just a question of timing, Tommy. If the Baja were around right now, maybe it would do much better. And we'll see. This segment's heating up, right? I think you can't talk about the Santa Cruz without mentioning the Maverick.
There's going to be a new Ford truck rumored that's going to be in this same size.
We have pictures of it.
But
We have really good pictures of it.
officially it doesn't exist. Ford won't acknowledge its existence, even though we've seen like photo shoots of it going on. We don't really know much about that. We're thinking it's going to be based on the Bronco Sport, which is the little baby Bronco. Now, one cool thing about these unibody trucks, and we see it in the Ridgeline and we see it in the Santa Cruz, is really, really, really impressive payload numbers. So the amount of stuff you can haul in the truck.
This thing has badass payload, man.
So the bed is not crazy, 660 pounds, which should be enough for most people. But apparently overall vehicle payload is 1,700 is what they were telling us.
Yeah, and for all of you guys and gals who want to go overlanding, that is phenomenal. That means you could put a massive rooftop tent on this thing and bring your big ass dog, bring your Bernese Mountain Dog, and not go over payload, which is pretty cool, and potentially tow a small trailer with it.
To keep that in perspective, a lot of full-size trucks, like F-150 size trucks, do not have 1,700 pounds of payload. And the Ridgeline is also high. The one we had was 1,543, which was also very impressive. Keep in mind, most mid-size trucks are going to be in like the high hundreds, like the 950 range, maybe the low 1,000-pound range. So 1,700 pounds is pretty incredible if that's really what it's going to have. So interior-wise, it's almost identical to that in the Tucson.
Yeah, it's basically much similar to the Tucson. I do love one thing, and we forgot to mention this on the Tucson. It has a push-button transmission, which I'm not in love with as well. But this one, they put a regular old, traditional stock, right, that you pull back to put into drive, and I love that. It just feels so good to have a truck where you actually don't push a button down or don't turn a rotary dial, but actually take a real knob and pull it. The other cool thing about it is it's got a lot of back seat room. Oftentimes the problem with any mid-sized truck is that rear seat is too upright, right? Because there's a bulkhead right there. This one actually is pushed back enough that you can sit comfortably in the back seat and not feel like you're in a Lutheran church from 1850.
That's right. It's very good space in the back, and the rear seat cushions fold up just like you would find.
And there's a little cubby there for storing.
Exactly,
Half
yeah.
of it's taken up by the jack, but the other half is a cubby.
Just like you would find on other pickup trucks.
And am I wrong? But is there a volume knob in this thing? Actually, there was a volume. No.
No, there's no volume knob.
You sure?
Yeah,
I
I'm looking at the pictures. There's buttons.
Is the same thing to touch?
Yeah,
Same as a Tucson.
It's the same center stack. It's very similar. It's got the digital instrument cluster as well. The seats look very, very similar. It's a very similar interior to what you'd find in the SUV version. Yeah.
Even the base model? Do we have like interior pictures of the base
I
model?
don't have interior pictures. We
See?
only had the
so
high-end
we're
one.
thinking. Okay, the other things for off-roading. If we will take it off-roading. Departure angle looks good. Breakover is going to be okay. Approach is not good. It's got this kind of chin that kind of juts out in the front of it, and then of course there's no real protection underneath it, so there's no real cladding. So if you're going to go some hard off-roading like boulder bashing, this is probably not the right vehicle. But in this picture that we have up here, where it's running kind of a typical Arizona desert road, I think it'll be perfect for that. And I can't wait, dude, to put on some like ATs on it, right? Because the tires it comes with are very similar to those that you would see on many crossovers. They're just all seasons, and I want to put some beefier ATs. I was looking at the space like between the front tire and the front fender. It doesn't look like it can actually do much of a lift on it, especially with the 20s. Maybe with the 18s, there's a little bit of room. I'm not sure, but it's independent front and rear suspension, notoriously hard to lift. So I'm not sure it's going to be easily liftable, but I think just throwing some, big old like knobby ATs would make it so much better.
At looking good?
No, at actually being, the most important thing you can do off-road is a tire.
This is not an off-roader. It's like the Ridgeline. It's just, it doesn't have the
I'm
basic
not going to
equipment.
go there yet. I'm going to try it out. I think if you get the traditional transmission with the smaller engine and the taller tires, I think it'll be actually really good.
But it doesn't have a locking diff.
No.
Doesn't have a rear locking diff.
No.
I think it's the similar all-wheel drive system that's in the Tucson, so it's got a single, it's basically an open rear diff. It doesn't have the trick like double clutch like in the Ford. It doesn't have underbody protection. It's got independent front suspension all around. It's got a pretty long front end for approach angle. I don't think it's not really meant to be an off-roader. It's meant to get you to some of the cool campsites, but if you need to go into the high 12,000 foot area where you're climbing rocks, it's not really built for that.
Yeah, but neither is like the RAV4 Adventure. Right?
And it doesn't do well at it. It's not.
The
That's not a good.
The Bronco Sport did really
But that
well.
has underbody protection. It's got recovery points. It's got that locking rear diff. It's got
the recovery points. I think they should have done recovery points. I think it would have given it. Recovery points, whether you use them or not. First of all, they're incredibly useful when you need them. Right? I mean, incredibly. Without them, you're like, oh my God, how do I get? I'll give you an example of that. I was. A couple of years ago, I was driving up over Loveland Pass in the middle of winter, and this guy I think it was a Mexican Versa, right? It had Mexican plates, had lost control and gone careening into a snowbank. And I have this Raptor with this winch on it. I'm like, perfect. I'll be happy to get you out. I felt bad. The guy's from Mexico. Snow is not something that is prevalent as far as I know in Mexico. So I was like, I'm going to rescue this dude. And then I had no place to hook on the winch. It would have been like that. It would have taken exactly like 4 minutes. And it was freaking cold and night and blizzardy. And in 4 minutes, I could have had him out of there with no recovery points. There was nowhere I could hook that winch to that would not damage the vehicle by pulling it out of the snowbank. I mean, you could put it around the rear axle. Maybe you might pull out the suspension. I don't know. Depends how hard it's stuck in the snowbank.
I think that like we talked about, the wet dual clutch is going to be better off-road than the dry. I'm really hoping that's the case. And I think that the normal automatic will be okay. And I think it's going to have a similar capability to like a RAV4 or Tucson. But I don't think it's not intended to be it's a dirt road cruiser. It's not
It's going to be interesting because Ford isn't going to, the one thing about Ford and trucks is they do not allow people to get ahead of them when it comes to any kind of a truck, right? Ford is about the most competitive company/person I've ever known when it comes to their truck market. And so Ford is going to go after this market, seriously, and they're going to go after it with all-wheel drive. I think this one may be more of the urban trucklet, right, for the guy who wants the surfboard, but I have no doubt that the Maverick is going to be more, off-road worthy and more traditionally trucky.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a new Baja either. I think we could see a
That whole class is going to heat up.
new offering from Subaru as well. I think Stellantis, formerly FCA, has some stuff abroad which they sell, little truck things. So I think we're going to see kind of a new introduction of a class
the
of
Toro.
compact.
You guys have you driven the Fiat Toro? That's a pretty cool little trucklet too.
There you go.
And the reason for that is because look, trucks have gotten so massive over the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Like a current Ranger is the size of an F-150 from maybe 2 generations ago. And so there's this huge now space underneath a mid-size truck. I know it's not mid-size, it's just called that. That is currently sitting empty. And I think, Hyundai has the first mover advantage here, but I think given this time next year, there's going to be a lot of choice. The other great thing about this is we don't know pricing, we don't know fuel economy. We do know availability, which will be this summer sometimes, right? So it's going to come out sometime this summer, but they're going to be affordable. Trucks have gotten so crazy expensive, right? It's now not uncommon to have a full-size truck at over $50K. And if you really want to push it, you can get into like the TRX territory, or dare I say it, the Hummer EV territory, where you're well over 100,000.
I think it's going to hopefully start about 26 and go to 40.
Yeah, I bet that's about right. Like the
26
Tucson,
to 40
it'll be
is
in
my
the
bet.
same.
So that's what I'm guessing on. But let us know what you guys think it's going to cost.
It's also going to come in these three kind of, what's become really hot right now? Our Defender is kind of this pastel earth tone blue, right? Think of these primary colors that have been, like this color, I think it's called a sage, right? Basically, you look at like earth tones that have been made pastel, that have been really toned down. Those colors are really red hot right now, and the Hyundai is going to come in 3 of them. You look at Defender. Defender is really the first one that started pushing those kind of really cool, kind of earthy colors, and I think it's going to make a big statement when it's going to have a vehicle like that. The other thing that this is going to compete with. Let's think about that, right? Right now, it's going to compete with nothing directly.
Well, but people will cross shop it with the Ridgeline.
But I think the company that's going to have the greatest competition from this is Subaru. I think this is aimed directly at like the Outback or the Forester. I
Potentially.
think that would be the person who I would see buying this. If you're looking at a Forester, or if you're looking at an Outback, maybe even a Crosstrek, if you're at a price point that's low enough, this is basically the kind of a very similar kind of buyer. Who's probably younger, who's adventure oriented, who's outdoorsy, and who wants something that expresses that about themselves. And is still affordable and gets good fuel economy, and yet is fun to drive.
Well, let us know what you guys think of the little
Santa Cruz?
Santa Cruz. Yeah, for sure. We're gonna.
It's not even that little, when you're next to it, it's got a lot of room presence.
Well, compared to like a Gladiator, it's pretty little.
Let me ask you, you're in that millennial, are you tempted by this?
No, I have no need for a pickup truck.
Really? Well, if you were buying a pickup truck, I know you don't love big pickup trucks, that you think they're really hard to park, which is true. Like the Raptor, the TRX, these are not fun things to park. Would this be something that you would be interested in, or would you look at something like a base Wrangler?
I still don't see the comparison there.
I'm looking at
if I was someone in the market for a pickup truck, because I had I was a biker, or I had like a little gardening side gig I was doing, I would probably go with a Tacoma. I think you can probably get more usability for a bigger vehicle, but I don't think a Tacoma or a Frontier is all that big. And I think that would be probably a better size. I think this is going to appeal to someone who's going to be cross-shopping it with like an SUV and be like, well, I can get a Santa Cruz, get a little bit more versatility. But I don't think it's going to appeal to the traditional truck buyer.
Fair enough. I tend to believe that people cross-shop more based on budget. I don't think anybody goes to a dealership and says, let me think now. I want a mid-size crossover, so I'm going to cross-shop the CR-V versus a RAV4 versus the Tucson, right?
Yeah.
I think they go in there and say, I've got $25,000. Here's what I want. Here's what I need. Oh, that's a cool color. And so, they may walk in getting a Tucson, but they may leave with a Santa Cruz. I just think that's how people are. And if it's got kind of that fun, cool, flavor, which it does, I think it'll do really well. But I do appreciate your opinion. I think you're right. If you're a traditional truck guy or gal, this may not do it for you.
This is going to have its audience, and I think it's going to be a very big audience, and it's going to be people that are really excited about the prospect of owning a more versatile vehicle than their SUV, and I think it's probably going to sell more than the Ridgeline. I think it looks better than the Ridgeline. I think it's better value than the Ridgeline in some ways if it's going to be mid to high 20s. So yeah, I definitely see the appeal here. I just don't think that someone who has a need for a pickup is going to take a serious look at this as an option.
Yeah, and let's put some numbers behind that. So, you know, the Tacoma is right now the best-selling midsize truck. It sells well over 250,000 units, right, every year. If you're looking at the Ridgeline, which is the, I don't know if it's the least selling, the Frontier may be that now, it's old, but they sell like between 50 and 60,000 units. Then, you know, you've got Ford Ranger at about 100 and going up, 1,000 units. Same thing with the Colorado Canyon Twins. So how many units do you think in that spectrum from like Ridgeline to Tacoma, how many of these things will they sell a year? You think they can sell 50,000 of them?
Yeah, I think they're going to sell 75,000. I think it's going to be really popular.
And do you think it'll cannibalize like Tucson sales, or will it like I said, you think it'll like cannibalize like Subaru Outback or I don't know, Trailblazer? Pick your crossover that you like.
I have no idea. None at all. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And I hope we get one, Hyundai, if it's possible. We'd love to get one for a long-term review. It's a very important vehicle. You know, a TFL truck is the largest truck outlet, I think, in America right now, thanks to Andre and Nathan and, you know, Kent, all their hard work. And so I think we need to get our hands on it because, you know, you can call it a sport adventure vehicle, but this is a truck. It's got a bed, and let's face it, it's a truck.
Yeah, well, be sure to stay tuned. We've got a lot more coming.
Yep, and thanks for hanging with us for this very special episode of the Tucson and Santa Cruz. And remember, if you want to look at these things, head on over to TFL Car or TFL Now, where we've got complete walk-around reviews. And thank you once again to Hyundai for inviting us and for getting us the chance to drive the Tucson and get our hands and feet, because I got the thing dirty. You know, I crawled up there for that. I felt so bad. I crawled up there in the bed to do a thumbnail for the video, and my shoes were filthy, and it was a black bed, and it looked like, you know, it looked like some wild animal had gotten loose in the bed after I got down.
Yeah, because it was like dusty, and yeah, that's okay though. They cleaned it out right away. The guy had no problem.
So thank you very much, Hyundai, for putting up with our shenanigans. As always, this is Roman.
Yep, and Tommy, we'll see you guys next time.
Ciao.